So this is a video on how to use the API in private application mode with Xero and Visual Studio.net. So I had trouble trying to find information on how to set it up myself. There was many instructions on how to do a public application, but I couldn't really find any examples on how to do private applications. Plus, on Windows you also definitely have a problem with OpenSSL and one of the commands they give you. So hopefully, this is the second time I'll be going through this myself, so I may make mistakes, but hopefully this video will get you started with a private application and Xero and their API and posting invoices or reading information from it. So the first thing is to make sure you have Visual Studio installed, make sure you have a Xero account, and let's sign in. So unless you've got a very blank company of your own here, you probably want to enable the demo one to post invoices to and test with the API. So to do that, you go up to the menu in the top left, go to My Xero, and along the bottom it should say try the demo company, and that should add it to your list of companies. While it's doing that, I'll also go to the API documentation. So I definitely want a private application because I'm making it for my own use and I'm not going to be sharing it with other companies, and I don't want to put it in their partner portal either, so private. And the bit I'm interested in is how to create the OpenSSL or SSL certificates that we'll be sharing, so go to that page. Right, looks like it's created, there we go, the demo company. So if we go back to My Xero, we've got my own company. Oh, it still doesn't list it there, but it takes you into it much quicker, and it's actually created it. If you don't do that step, then in the API screens you don't see the demo company as an option to select. So let's get started. Download OpenSSL. Now, on my Windows 8 machine it tells me this, and I think it's actually installed. That doesn't seem to bother or cause a problem if I just skip that message anyway. I'm going to install it to the default path because that's much easier. And I want to install them in the default OpenSSL thing because I'm not going to use it for anything else other than generating these certificates, so I don't really want it polluting my Windows directory. And I don't fancy donating at the moment, thank you. So that's downloaded. And next I'll move on to generating the certificates. So now I'm ready to create these certificates. I'm going to run a command prompt. Then we want to go to the OpenSSL directory that we just installed, and the bin folder for the binaries, which are basically the programs, and then we can literally just copy and paste all of these commands, except I'm going to modify one of them, and one of them will fail, and I'll show you how to fix that as well. So I'm going to create, I'll leave the file names default, and they'll end up in the OpenSSL bin directory, which I'll bring up just so you can see them being created. Date modified, newest at the top. So that's created the private key.pem file. I think this is the command which fails. Also, where it's got the days, I'm going to up that to 10 years because I'm going to keep hold of my certificate. I don't expect it to leak out, and having it a shorter duration will just be annoying because suddenly the application that I make will stop working because the certificate has expired. So we want this in days, 365 days in a year times 10 years. So 3650, and I fully expect this to now say that it can't read the config file. No, it has worked. In the past, I've had it where it says it can't read the config file, and the way I fix that is you do -config and then OpenSSL.cfg. So country code, I'm in GB, which is Great Britain. And then we carry on with the rest of these instructions. Enter a password. It just basically means that if somebody wants to export your keys, they have to type in a password. It's going to enter a random one. Right, that's created the certificates. So we now want to go to My Applications at the top of the Xero Developer Center. We want to create a private application for use with just my organization. Application name, Invoice Importer. So because I've added the demo company in the main Xero interface, it now appears as one of my options here. So I don't really want to run it against my main company, even though at the moment it's blank, but you may already have data in there that you don't want to mess up. So demo company, and in Notepad we need to load the public key to give to Xero. And hopefully it'll accept that. Yep, there you go, application added. Now we need to make a note of these consumer keys and consumer secrets. So and that's all you need to do for the moment in the Developer Center. And next we move into Visual Studio land. So here we are, new project. So this is where I had real trouble because it wasn't obvious how you got I guess all of the framework for Xero into Visual Studio. Somewhere on GitHub there's a file that I downloaded and I still couldn't get it to work properly in Visual Studio. In the end I worked out, probably via a lot of Googling, that you can go into project and then I think manage and you get projects, and as far as I remember I can just type in Xero in the online section. Xero, go. Yeah, perfect. So I believe I've installed both of these. Oh, okay, installing the first one has a requisite of the other one, so it's installed that already. So, imports. we need the OAuth. Actually, I'm not sure whether it brought this in. dev-defined.oauth. Yes, it did. Excellent. Now, what I did with the application that I made initially is I had it connect on startup because persistent connection throughout the time my program was open wasn't a problem, because it was just literally a batch invoice importer, but you might want to put a button that says connect to Xero. But in this example I'll do the same thing that I had done previously for the one that I had made. So I want to define a connection. I messed that up. So Xero API dot OAuth. API private session, and it takes lots and lots of inputs. So user agent, I don't think it particularly needs to match what you told it in the API. So this is where we need the consumer key, which they gave you earlier. Consumer key. And the path to the certificate. So I've left mine just in the default OpenSSL directory, but you probably, for production use, should move that to somewhere on your secure on your network or somewhere from where your code is running from, because if somebody deletes the OpenSSL directory, then you have to recreate your keys and edit your program for the new path. So get the file name. Although it needs to be a particular type, so new x5, which probably means I'm missing an import. Yes. You also need to import, if I can remember what it is, system.security.cryptography x5 x. There we go. So that entire line, I shall scroll across it so you can read it. If you're using YouTube, then just pause this if you need to. And now I think to actually make the connection, so if I start this, hopefully it won't complain at me. do need to, from that password that we set in the command prompt earlier, you do need to supply the password. So there we are. I guess if I had at this prompt here for the password just pressed enter and left it blank, I wouldn't need this extra bit with the passphrase for the certificate. And that's loaded and probably connected fine. So the next thing we need to do is insert invoices or read information back from Xero. So I'm going to add a button. So this is new to me because in the past I've used contact IDs, so I'll probably stick to that for the moment. So I'm going to go to Xero, and from the demo company find a contact. Pick one that isn't at the very top of the list, so it's more obvious. Espresso. So contact ID is up there. Let's do plural on that. I presume I could do here where contacts.name equals and then put in the name and it would match against it as well. So let's see whether this button works. Yep, there we go, it's found matched against that contact ID. It's not capitals dependent, as Espresso 31, which is very much correct. I fancy playing about a little bit here because I've not done this. Let's see whether we can look it up by name. Other than the horrible pasting errors. Brilliant. I couldn't spell the first time, but there we go. You can look it up by name. presume I can also do like, and then put in something that multiple companies contain, and it will just spool through them. Let's do city, because there's city agency and city limousines there, two of them. Okay, well, it's partially implemented. It gives you it as one of the options, but you can't actually look up with a like, so you do need to do an equals. So next, let's try automatically creating an invoice. And before I do that, I'm going to go back to the GUID I had earlier, because I'll need that to create the invoice. Perfect. So this assigns the invoice to the above contact. And I'm going to assign it today's date for the invoice. Oops, if I could spell. And make it due 14 days from today's date. Yeah, you may not want to set this to authorized for your use, but I'm going to set it to authorized for this demonstration. Note the plurals here, line items versus line item. So we're creating an invoice with multiple items and then creating the item. And I'm going to do 2 for this invoice. £50 each. Nope, now we need to add it to the invoice. And then I'm going to add a second one. We could just copy and paste the code. And now we need to actually submit this to Xero. And pass the response we get back from them so we can tell whether it failed or not. So let's give this a go. Accidentally defining that twice. The thing I do need to do is get rid of define. So we define it and then we just set it as a new one to redo. That code could probably be better, but for this example it will do. So just to make sure that the company lookup still works. Yes, it does, Espresso 31. Now hopefully, let's check what's underneath their account. And create invoice. See whether we get a success. Yes, we do. Invoice created. So I'm not sure whether it shows on this screen if I refresh. Yes, it does. Outstanding invoice. So recent invoices. And perfect. So that should match the code. 2 replacement routers at £50 each, and 1 engineer time at £275. I can work out where Visual Studio is. So yep, 2 replacement routers, £50 each, 1 engineer time, £275. And there we go. So just with that fairly short snippet of code, we've logged into or created an SSL certificate and shared it with Xero and looked up a contact. We're showing you a good start on how to look up a contact by name, or using a GUID in your own system and to reference to it, and how to create an invoice. And then your accountant can go in and email the invoices, or bookkeeper can go in and email the invoices without having to retype all of the stuff. A couple of things you really should be aware of though is the limits on the API. So it's the time-based limits that you should be aware of, and the daily limits of apparently only 1,000 requests to their API, and the per minute one. So if you're adding, say, 120 invoices to your system, you're going to need to delay each request by 1 second. Otherwise you'll hit their limit basically, and they'll start rejecting the invoices. You, with more efficient code, could batch together a whole load of invoices and post them at once, so that you could create 120 invoices just with one or slightly less requests. In this example, it's not doing that, but that's all up to you. But you just be aware that they have rate limits on how often you can hit the API. So I hope this has been useful. Certainly would have helped me if there was a video like this when I was searching, because there was, as I say, a lot of information on how to create a shared application and how to connect using Visual Studio or Visual Basic into a shared application, but not how to do it onto a private application. So off you go. Good luck.